We are fast moving to a point where all titles are held on tokens in your wallet. Okay. The more convenient it is to have your equity and your wealth near you, and the more that we've been trained to think short term, and be consumer driven. Gee, I want that boat. Well, gosh, I've got my equity right on my phone. It's just a little bit. I still have a lot more. Before you know it, you've spent your equity, and now your home is owned by somebody in China or somewhere else. So what they want is they want things to happen faster and faster and easier. In order to do that, it has to be easier and easier and easier. Think about it. When you had to carry around these 1 ounce coins, they kind of get heavy in your pocket. But here's a gold certificate, right? That is so much more convenient and so much easier to carry paper bills than, this big heavy coin. Okay. But don't worry, because you can go to the bank and you can convert this into this whenever you want, until you couldn't. We are being set up to own nothing. I'm pretty sure you won't be happy. But if you make that choice, even though you were nudged into doing it, even though they employ the most brilliant psychological minds to nudge you into doing that, who are you going to complain to? Who are you going to blame? You're going to blame yourself. So what I really recommend is to have a truly diversified portfolio. We've been taught to think, well, if you have stocks and you have bonds, then you have a diversified portfolio. But look at what happened last year, where they're all synchronized. It doesn't matter what you have. If it's in this garbage, so you need to properly diversify your portfolio. And right now you have, stocks and bonds that are at really nosebleed fiat money valuations, and you have gold and silver that is severely undervalued. That's going to flip-flop, particularly when they need to regain that confidence. So, we have formulas that are based on those historic norms, so that how much gold do I really need to protect my pension, to pay off my mortgage, to make sure that I can pay my property taxes. Look at Venezuela. Right? They're in the middle of it. You've got 90% of the population that is in abject poverty. And then the government comes out and says, well, raise some backyard chickens, maybe put in a little garden. Well, they trained us away from that kind of living because they wanted us more dependent on the system. And the system is a just-in-time system. So, we're used to getting things immediately. And I think we've all seen that is not really the way things work anymore. Well, if there's no purchasing power left, which means they have to attack principal, the system doesn't work anymore. It's at the end of the road. There's no more kicking the can. So what if, just suppose that this next crisis is engineered to make that transition? So no, they don't want to kick the can down the road anymore because they know they're at the end. Maybe that's why global central banks have bought more gold than they have since 1967, when what was happening then? A monetary regime shift. So maybe this is being orchestrated and they're going to attempt to control this. And that's where our opportunity lies, if enough people vote with their purses and get what they can out of the system and into sound money and into those other pieces that support a reasonable standard of living. And people don't realize the opportunities that lie ahead. I mean, look at the current prices on real estate. They are outrageous. Even though they're starting to come down, that was targeted for reflation. So this is what happens. Gold is down here, real estate is down here. That's going to flip-flop. And I've done studies on, 25 ounces of gold, buying entire city blocks, buildings and all. So now you can take this, convert it into income producing assets that you cannot outlive and can be passed down to generations so that your children, so much of what I do is for the children. I'm 68. I think I'm going to live to be 100, but I'm in the last third of my life. Let's face it. I am. I'm not going to be around that much longer. But I have children. I have grandchildren. Someday I hope to have great-grandchildren. And if we sit back and do nothing and just allow them to take control, what choices will our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren into the future? What choices will they have? Now you have opportunities to grow that dynastic wealth and make sure that your children, your grandchildren, all the generations to come have choices. That's what it's really about. It's having the freedom of choice and having freedom. I want my children, all my children, I want them to have those choices. I want them to have that freedom. I want them to have the ability to dream and have the ability to make those dreams come true. First of all, we are so incredibly interconnected. But if you go back to the Depression in the 1930s, that was actually a global depression at that time as well, though we were not as interconnected as we are now. So, the way that I see it is, frankly, a major global hyperinflationary or hyper-deflationary, right? People think that deflation is different than inflation when in reality, it's just they're the same coin. It's just the opposite side. I think we could see a global revolution and I actually kind of hope that that's what happens because we need a much more fair system. And if those that are in power now are able to create that new system and retain control of it, we're not going to get a very fair system for most.